As time went on, I lived and breathed PSI. I attended classes practically every night, learning everything from numerology and past life regression to metaphysical interpretation of the Bible, revealed in the books of Dr. Emmett Fox. Even though he wrote these books in the 1930s and 40s, he said that the dominant note of the Aquarian New Age, which we're in now, was spiritual development and demonstration. That there was no need for gurus or prophets to lead us, some of whom may be false, but that we could find the truth within ourselves. In his book, Alter Your Life, Emmett Fox said that if you maintain an attitude of mental peace and goodwill toward all, if you really root out of your own heart every atom of hostility and condemnation for your fellow man, no matter who he is, then you will be safe. But if you allow yourself to be drawn into any current of hatred against anyone, any nation, race or class of people, then you will have to suffer the consequences. He added, if you allow yourself to be carried away by any political, religious or newspaper campaign of hatred, no matter how self-righteously it may be camouflaging itself, then you will be laying yourself open to destructive tendencies. It is for you to choose, knowing that as you do choose, so it will be done to you. He wrote those inspiring and enlightening words over 80 years ago, and I'm sure you'll agree that they definitely ring true today. I would say that a great deal of the format of PSI, which we were told stood for People Searching Inside, was based on the New Thought non-denominational teachings of Emmett Fox. He was also a natural healer and believed that healing meant complete harmony of body, mind and soul. PSI went beyond that by exploring the work of Edgar Cayce, a clairvoyant healer. For me, the idea that sending positive energy of healing light to someone who's suffering is a type of prayer and an act of love for another human being. I took this very seriously, and every morning before I went to my PR job, I'd surround myself with protective white light as we were taught, then meditate for 2 hours working on psychic healing cases. I then handed in the results that night. I was actually pretty accurate with my psychic diagnoses, as well as picking up certain characteristics of the subject. For instance, seeing art materials around a person or musical instruments. I was chosen to demonstrate psychic healing in the introductory class, and I saw several cats around a young man, which was confirmed by the person who'd submitted his name. I was having very little sleep though, but far from being tired, I was energized and exhilarated by all the exciting work I was doing with PSI. I didn't have time for anyone or anything else. We were actually encouraged to drop friends who'd not taken the PSI course, and I know that marriages and relationships were destroyed because of it. More and more was being asked of me. I must speak to 5 people a day about PSI, and was called in the early hours of the morning by one of the instructors to confirm I'd done it. When I couldn't meet my quota, I was told that if I really loved my fellow man, I would make sure I spread the word. I was then asked to tithe more than the 10% of my salary I was already contributing. I refused. Then I was told to have sex with one of the male graduates who was having difficulty in that area. I refused. It was well known that Joe was having sex with some of the younger female graduates who saw it as a badge of honor, but it repulsed me. When the initial introductory class wasn't signing up enough members, the 12 of us recent 7-day graduates, the disciples, were asked to write down our negative and positive comments about Joe's presentation. I wrote quite a few negative remarks, such as Joe wearing a white suit, which put one of my guests off. Who Who does he think he is? Jesus, she said. Someone else had commented that Joe's big diamond rings were too flashy and off-putting. We all submitted our comments the next night, and whereas I had quite a list of negatives, nearly everyone else had written positive remarks. But I was hypercritical because I loved PSI and wanted to make it better. However, when Mike, one of the instructors, was looking through the submissions, he said, "We have someone here who thinks she can walk on water." I knew he was talking about me, and it made me very uncomfortable. Then at the end of the evening, he put his arm around me and said, "I love you, Marie." Although hugging and declarations of love from the instructors to the members was the norm, and, as I figured out later, was meant to lull us into a false sense of security, this felt different. With his arm around my shoulder, Mike slipped a piece of paper into my hand. Then he walked away. I looked at what was written on the paper. It said, "To criticize others is a roundabout way of praising yourself." Well, shortly after that, graduates started giving me the cold shoulder, including my boyfriend Ian, who I'd introduced to the 4-day course. This was the beginning of the end of my PSI experience, and I gradually stepped away. Before I did, though, I was curious to know how my friend John had got on during the 7-day seminar he'd just returned from. A meeting of recent graduates, along with other members, was being held at the German Club near downtown Toronto. As I walked inside the building, I heard chanting and saw Joe in his white suit standing on a stage. 80 or so people stood facing him with their right arms raised in a Hitler salute, yelling out his name, "Joe, Joe, Joe!" It gave me the chills, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. With the fervour they exhibited, I believe that if Joe had told them to go out and attack undesirables, whomever he decided they were, these graduates would have done it. It made me realise the truth of Emmett Fox's words about false prophets and how power can corrupt. 2 weeks later, I learned that my friend John had been killed when he was a passenger in a car driven by a graduate when they were returning from a long and exhausting 4-day course in Sarnia, Ontario. The driver fell asleep at the wheel and was unhurt, but John was killed instantly. He was 24. There were more tragedies, especially after one of the grueling advanced 7-day courses. A woman who'd recently had a miscarriage tried to take her life when she was convinced that she chose the death of her child. A few other people were hospitalized with mental problems. An expose was carried out by a Toronto newspaper, and a criminal investigation took place, accusing Joe DuPong and his team of severe mental and physical abuse of PSI members. They were also accused of embezzlement. I was interviewed and asked to dish the dirt, but, I couldn't say anything negative about the PSI training. It had saved me when I was at my most vulnerable. It gave me a sense of well-being, as well as the mental tools to improve my life and to help others. It also made me realize that I had my own thoughts and strengths and could not be manipulated or brainwashed, and that was a real gift. I guess you would call me a fatalist, but I honestly do believe that we all have a destiny in life. We may not know what that is, but I feel it's so important to trust the process of life. Wherever you are now may not be the ideal situation, but don't worry, you're not stuck there forever. You can change it. You have a choice. When I left the law company in Toronto, I had no idea where I was going next, but I trusted that the right thing would come along. I didn't panic. I knew there would be a parachute, and it was a wonderful one that changed the course of my life and was the next big step on my journey to Hollywood. Next time, the power of visualization.